Our story begins on a day of heavy rain. A small boy sat crying, pleading with his grandfather, "Please, don't leave me alone and go." But the old man responded firmly, "This journey is dangerous. You can't come with me, Jin." Then he bid him farewell and walked away. In the present day, Jin has become a 17-year-old teenager. He woke up late. It was supposed to be the day of the big competition. Unfortunately, he had broken his alarm clock without realizing it. He rushed to grab his bike, trying to catch up to the beginning of the event. As he rode his bicycle at insane speed, he almost collided with an old woman walking on the road. With remarkable control, he avoided her, but crashed into the bridge barriers, shattering them. Miraculously, he wasn't hurt. You think it ends here? No, my friend. Jin gathered his strength, grabbed the bike, and got back on the road. Where was Jin headed? To the high school hero tournament, the most talked about competition, the one everyone dreamed of winning. Elsewhere, a group of students who had failed to enter the competition stood watching. A young girl named Mira approached and asked them where the tournament was being held. Meanwhile, Jin was still pedaling when he saw a thief snatch a bag from an elderly woman and run. Moved by her cries for help, Jin raced after him with determination. The thief glanced back mockingly and thought to himself, "Does this fool think he can catch me on a bicycle? He must be insane." But Jin didn't stop. He pushed harder and faster. The thief climbed to a higher platform, thinking Jin wouldn't be able to follow. But Jin was relentless. As the chase continued, a girl fell nearby, and her glasses broke. Jin quickly apologized and kept pursuing the thief. But the girl, Mira, didn't just stand by. She threw her sword at the thief, striking him directly, and began attacking him. Jin explained what had happened, and touched by his story, she joined him in catching the thief. The thief thought he had escaped. He jumped on a motorcycle to flee. But Jin stopped his bicycle abruptly, and Mira launched herself at the thief with force. As she prepared to strike, a sign suddenly popped up that said, "Stop." The thief hesitated, thinking he was saved. But out of nowhere, a powerful punch from another man knocked him off the motorcycle and slammed him to the ground. A perfect shot. The three, Jin, Mira, and a young man named Handai, then headed together to the tournament. This was no ordinary event. It brought together the strongest students in the kingdom, and the winner would be granted one wish, any wish, no matter how great. A dream come true, right? As they waited, the three began getting to know each other. The announcer called the participants to enter the battle arena and explained the tournament rules, the most important of which was the nano-healing system. "On each of your wrists is a watch," he said. "This device will heal you from all injuries during combat. Your task now is to fight with all your strength. No fear, no hesitation." Then, with a grin, he added, "And by fight, I mean starting now." Everyone was caught off guard. It was an elimination round. The battle erupted immediately, blows flying in every direction. The arena looked more like a massacre. One fighter, a skilled kung fu martial artist, knocked down anyone who came near. Others showed stunning combat prowess. Handai delivered an incredible punch that amazed the crowd, and Mira fought with swordsmanship full of elegance and focus. But none of that compared to what Jin did. A large group of students targeted him, thinking he was weak, but he stood his ground and brought them down one after the other with astonishing grit. The judges watched with impressed expressions. Then suddenly, one of the judges received a call announcing the arrival of the final contestant. This newcomer entered the arena with immense confidence, attacking everyone mercilessly, kicking, stomping, and insulting others as he went. Mira couldn't stand his behavior and charged at him with her sword at full force, but he dodged every strike, mocked her, and even trapped her sword between his legs in a display of pure arrogance. At that moment, Jin stepped in, filled with rage. He managed to land a strike on the contestant's leg and said seriously, "I think it's time I fought you." Then he launched himself forward with full power into a showdown worthy of legends. The scene shifts to a military organization, discussing a strange phenomenon that had appeared on one of the islands. Suddenly, alarms blared. An intruder had breached the base. A man entered, introducing himself as Park Mu-jin, clearly bringing something ominous with him. Back at the tournament, it was over. Jin had defeated the arrogant contestant, and Mira broke his neck to reclaim her sword. The contestant was then taken away for medical treatment. On their way back, the trio walked together, talking and getting to know one another better. Each one shared why they had joined the competition. Jin said, "I want to grow stronger. I want to fight powerful people, that's all." Handai spoke about a dear friend lying in a hospital, someone he wished to cure from a terrible illness. But instead of revealing the whole truth, he simply said he wanted money. Mira shared her dream. "I want to revive my family's sword dojo." Jin asked her, "Then why did you let your sword get stolen during the match?" Before she could answer, she noticed the sword with Jin, the one he'd taken back from the thief. She rushed toward him, but it slipped from his hand and sank into the sea. "I'll get it back for you," said Jin, but she slapped him and shouted, "I never want to see you again." Then she dove into the water alone, remembering her grandfather's words when he gave her the sword, how he'd asked her to restore the dojo to its former glory. Her heart ached with sorrow. But suddenly, Jin appeared again, holding a lantern, diving into the water to help her search. She apologized. "I'm sorry I slapped you. That sword belonged to my grandfather." Jin smiled and said, "If it belonged to your grandfather, then we must find it quickly." At that moment, Han brought a large flashlight to illuminate the area and help them find the sword quickly. From that point on, a strong bond of friendship began to form between the three of them, and they soon became the closest of friends. The next day marked the beginning of the second round of the tournament, which consisted of one-on-one duels between the contestants. All participants gathered in the arena, each waiting for their turn. The first stage was easy for everyone. They managed to defeat their opponents within seconds. During the second stage, Jin was lying down, resting and waiting for his turn when Ying approached him and said, "I'll defeat you in the arena." But Jin didn't respond. He simply continued his nap. Another contestant came over and scolded Ying. "Fighting outside the ring is not allowed." Ying, angered by the comment, was about to strike him, but Jin stepped in at the last moment and calmly said, "Never lower your guard for anyone, my friend." The boy appreciated Jin's words and thanked him. Time passed, and the match between Ying and that same boy began. The boy appeared to be a strong opponent, but Ying removed one of his bracelets and began assaulting him violently. The boy collapsed, unable to move, yet Ying continued beating him mercilessly in front of the crowd. The audience shouted for the match to be stopped, but Ying refused to stop. He continued to brutalize the boy's body, as if trying to compensate for a previous loss. He screamed at him, demanding an apology, but the boy responded, "I will never apologize to someone like you." Ying, now more furious, removed another bracelet and went on to completely wreck his opponent. But do you really think Jin would allow that to continue? Absolutely not. Jin intervened and struck Ying with a flying kick, then said in a firm tone, "I know I haven't hit you properly yet. Come on. Show me what you've got." Ying tried to counter with all his strength, but Jin landed a devastating blow that shattered part of the arena. How ruthless. The referees rushed to stop Jin for illegally interfering in the match, but suddenly, a demonic aura surged from Ying. He began recalling the moment of his earlier defeat when a mysterious girl had granted him dark energy to use in battle. Ying went berserk and attempted to kill everyone, but Jin didn't stand idly by. He unleashed his ultimate attack, completely crushing Ying's body. The crowd and the judges were stunned by Jin's overwhelming strength, but just as Jin began to catch his breath, he suddenly collapsed and found himself restrained. Yes, Park Mujin had arrived. It turned out he was the founder of the tournament and one of the kingdom's most powerful figures. Park addressed the audience, announcing that Jin had violated the tournament rules, and for that, he would be imprisoned until the judges could deliberate on his fate. Yet the crowd cheered Jin's bravery, sensing that something much greater was about to unfold. Meanwhile, a secret organization was quietly orchestrating something dangerous, hinting at looming trouble. At the same time, the judges convened to discuss the fate of Jin, Ying, and the injured contestant. It was decided that the other two competitors would not continue. One was physically destroyed, and the other was emotionally shattered. One woman on the panel said, "This is all his fault. He should be disqualified." But Park looked at Jin's name and suddenly recognized his grandfather. Shocked, he decided to let Jin stay in the competition. Elsewhere, Mira was facing off against a girl named Mason, who was beloved by the crowd, except for a few men who cheered for Mira. The match began with Mason in full control. She knocked Mira to the ground. Mira tried to use her sword, but it proved useless. Mason unleashed her ultimate move, slamming Mira to the floor, causing her sword to fall from her hand. Believing she had won, Mason began to celebrate. But suddenly, Mira rose again and used the sword technique her grandfather had taught her. Without even using a weapon, she managed to wound Mason and finish the match with a dual-handed strike. The audience was disappointed, except for those few men who were overjoyed. Jin watched from afar, feeling truly happy for Mira's victory. Later, Park Mujin approached Jin and said, "I'll allow you to continue in the competition, if you can defeat the commissioner." Jin, excited, replied, "Deal." Before leaving, Park handed him a small bag of fruit and told him to eat it. Jin smiled and said, "Thank you." On his way out, he met Mira and Han and told them what would happen the next day. Everyone was overjoyed that he wasn't expelled from the tournament. But somewhere else, a girl told Park that the fruit he gave Jin could be lethal if Jin was just an ordinary human. Park replied, "We must be sure. Is his grandfather truly the tiger?" And at that moment, Jin had already begun eating the cursed fruit. As soon as he swallowed it, he felt excruciating pain and collapsed, vomiting blood. Could this really be the end? The following day, Han Di went to visit his friend in the hospital, who had entered the tournament seeking a cure for his condition. Han introduced him to his new friends, Jin and Mira, and told him, "Your match is today." The boy tried to joke around to lighten the mood before Han left. Han stepped into the arena to face a boy named Bayek. The referee signaled the start, and the match began. Bayek said, "Judging by your hands, you're a skilled karate fighter." Han replied, "That's right." Bayek grinned. "I studied karate for 3 years. I'll end you now." He attacked with his weapon and managed to land several hits on Han's body. Han didn't respond, taking blow after blow. Baek taunted, "Didn't I tell you I'd finish you?" Han struggled, trying to dodge the strikes. After a while, he began to read Baek's movements and launched a counterattack. The fight grew intense, until Baek suddenly slipped and was vulnerable. But surprisingly, Han didn't strike. Instead, he let himself take damage and reached out to help him up. "What incredible spirit and honor." Baek asked, "Why didn't you hit me?" Han replied, "Only cowards strike a fallen opponent." Baek smiled, "Prepare yourself now. I'll fight with everything I've got." Han answered, "Bring it on." They charged at each other, and Baek landed a solid blow that nearly knocked Han out. Baek declared, "I've hit you in 12 places, even pierced your internal organs. You won't last much longer." At that moment, Han Deep was remembering his friend as he battled illness. He recalled his words, "Life is nothing but a struggle. Never surrender to it." Han Deep summoned all his strength and shouted, "Come at me!" Then he charged toward Baek with all his might. Han activated the first style of his fist and struck him down, then used the second style to completely immobilize him, unleashing punches from every direction. Baek was completely powerless to respond and collapsed to the ground, defeated. Everyone was stunned by Han Deep's strength, and cheers erupted in joy and admiration. Magnificent. Truly magnificent. After the fight ended, it was Jin's turn to face the commissioner. At that time, Jin was still asleep, haunted by strange and mysterious memories, until he suddenly opened his eyes. The commissioner stood waiting for him, while some members of the crowd, growing bored, began to leave. As for Park, he sat nervously, anticipating what would happen, until someone shouted, "Jin has arrived!" Park smiled. The commissioner scoffed and said to Jin, "Were you hiding in the bathroom out of fear?" Jin didn't respond. He felt a strange warmth surging through his body. Then, the instructor explained the rules of the match, saying, "If Jin manages to knock down the commissioner, he wins and returns to the competition. That's all. Let's begin." In less than a second, Jin stood before the commissioner and said, "Take off your glasses." Then he floored him with a single blow. The referee couldn't believe what had happened and murmured under his breath, "Jin has won the match." But the commissioner refused to accept defeat and lunged at Jin with all his power, only for Jin to strike him on the head. Jin felt something unusual in his body, while the commissioner, now seething with rage, decided to unleash his full strength, releasing an energy called sharing from within. The sharing energy began attacking Jin from all directions. He had no idea where to escape. He was caught and nearly killed, had it not been for the intervention of the other commissioners, who stepped in to protect him. Park Mu-jin entered the arena and turned to the Green Commissioner, saying, 3 months' salary have been docked from your pay, and you know why. Then he looked at the unconscious Jin and said, "It's settled. You are the grandson of Tai Jin, the little tiger. I can't just let you slip through my fingers." Following a string of victories by Jin, Mira, and D, they advanced to the semifinals. Mira would face D, while Jin would face a new opponent. As they walked down the road, a man appeared flying toward them. He stepped out of his car and knelt before Mira, proposing marriage. Days later, Mira was sitting with her younger sister, trying on her wedding dress. Had she accepted the proposal? The man reappeared and went to Mira's training ground, once again asking for her hand, after she had rejected him in front of Jin and D. But she refused him again, saying, "I'm still too young." However, he replied, "I'll return your family's sword dojo to you. I'm the only one who can help you get it back. I mastered the style just for you." Mira was swayed by his words and agreed to marry him. But her uncle sensed that she didn't truly want this marriage. How could she abandon all the effort she had put in and let someone else fulfill her dream? So he went to the groom and said, "Mira rushed this decision, and I believe she's too young to marry now." But the groom replied, "I will marry her. I'm the only one capable of restoring your family's glory, unlike you and your failure of a brother." The uncle bowed his head in silence. Meanwhile, Jin was sitting in a restaurant, ordering a simple meal, when he overheard a group of girls talking about Mira and her famous fiancé. He was shocked to learn that she had agreed to marry him. He rushed to her home, and when he arrived, he asked her, "Why did you agree to marry him? Have you forgotten your dream?" Mira said to him, "He's the one who will help me achieve that dream." Jin replied, "You'll throw away all your hard work and let someone else fulfill your dream? You're giving it all up so easily?" But Mira shut the door in his face, saying, "It's none of your business." Jin called D and told him what had happened. D said, "Maybe she's happy. Just let her be." But Jin replied, "No, I won't leave her." The next day, Mira wore her wedding dress and began preparing for her wedding. Her uncle saw her and noticed her fake smile, so he decided to cancel the wedding at the last moment. But Mira reassured him, saying, "Don't worry, I'm fine." Then she turned to the groom and asked, "Do you know why I agreed to marry you?" He answered, "Because I'll restore your dojo, of course." She said, "Exactly." At that moment, Mira's sister realized the truth. Mira isn't marrying someone she loves. She's doing it only for her family. Suddenly, the legend Jin appeared. He said to her, "I don't like this wedding. Let's ruin it." She replied, "Let's do it." Jin rushed with D to the wedding venue, but guards were preventing everyone from entering. Jin didn't want to hurt them, they weren't part of the competition. He tried to slip past them without violence, but he couldn't. The guards began attacking him, until D intervened, knocking them all down at once and saying, "Sorry, just a little push." Meanwhile, Mira was walking into the ceremony hall with her uncle, and the wedding was moments from happening. We soon discovered that the groom never loved Mira. He was only after her hidden power, a power even she was unaware of. But Jin and D arrived at the wedding just in time. The groom snapped, "Enough! We don't need more disturbances." He drew his sword and attacked the two, but D grabbed his sword, allowing Jin to approach Mira and speak to her. He said, "Why are you doing this? Don't you realize that a dream means nothing if you don't achieve it with your own hands? You're giving up everything you've worked for and marrying now?" At that moment, Mira began recalling her memories. Everything she had sacrificed just to fulfill her grandfather's dream. Moved by Jin's words, she began hitting herself, trying to mask her pain. But just then, her uncle stepped in and said, "You don't have to torture yourself any longer, Mira." Her sister agreed with him. Mira then remembered her grandfather's final words. "Fulfill your dream in your own way." Overcome with emotion, she burst into tears. And at last, she was convinced. She refused to go through with the marriage. She turned to the groom and said she was sorry, but she would not marry him. The groom suddenly burst into a terrifying laugh, releasing a wave of dark energy similar to that of the commissioner. With a mocking tone, he shouted, "Shame on you all!" and lunged toward D and Jin. But Mira leapt in front of them and took the hit instead. Then, she unleashed her technique, Moon Distance, and eliminated him completely. What an incredible young woman. And just like that, the wedding was gloriously ruined. Afterward, the groom stole Mira's sword and refused to return it. Yet Mira remained unfazed. With calm confidence, she said, "My grandfather's spirit lives within me, not the sword," and laughed from the depths of her heart. What a radiant soul. Meanwhile, D's friend was in critical condition. He seemed to be in his final moments. When D saw his friend like that, he stood frozen, as though his entire dream was collapsing. D returned to his job, but his mental state was severely affected. He became so tense that he even started hitting customers. On the day of his match with Mira, Jin overslept and arrived late. When he finally made it to the arena, he was shocked by what he saw. D mercilessly beating Mira, striking her exactly where she had been previously injured. She eventually collapsed unconscious, and D won the match. After the fight, Jin was filled with rage toward D. Tension was clearly building. Then we flash back to 2 years earlier, when D first met his one and only loyal friend. They often argued, yet he remained the closest person in D's life. One day, overwhelmed by guilt for what he had done to Mira, D found himself vomiting blood in the bathroom. He thought of his ailing friend and Mira, torn between right and wrong. But why did D do all this? Let me tell you. After his friend's condition became critical, D went to Park and begged him to heal him using nanotechnology. Park responded, "If you want to save him, you'll have to do exactly as I say." D agreed. The condition was that he must win the remaining matches in the Crusher tournament. The true goal was to test Jin's strength, whether he would become a tiger like his grandfather or not. But what was poor Mira's fault in all this? The next day, Jin defeated his opponent in mere seconds, clearly consumed by rage. He later visited Mira in the hospital to apologize for what D had done. "I didn't know he would go that far," he said. Mira smiled and replied, "It's okay. We don't know what he's going through. Just focus on your matches." What a noble girl. Jin simply said, "All right," and the day came to a close. Finally, the decisive match had arrived. Jin versus D. What would happen? Both fighters entered the arena, and the battle began. It was brutal, each one striking with full force. Jin used his taekwondo style, landing powerful blows. D countered by targeting the same spots he had hit on Mira, then briefly stepped back. But Jin, furious, shouted, "I will never forgive you for what you did to our friend." Then he used his ultimate skill, throwing D to the edge of the ring. As Jin advanced to finish the fight, D struck him unexpectedly, preparing to unleash his full power to kill him. Was this truly the end? Meanwhile, Mira had completed her treatment. As she left, she noticed a crowd gathered near the operating room. Approaching them, she saw a girl sobbing over D's dying friend. The girl cried out, "Didn't you say you'd settle things with him before you died? Get up! D's doing all of this for you." But it was too late. He had passed away. Upon witnessing this, Mira finally understood everything. Why D had acted so cruelly toward her. Back in the arena, D had full control, pummeling Jin until he collapsed. The referee began the countdown. If Jin didn't rise, D would be declared the winner. Suddenly, Park appeared and whispered to D, "Your friend's condition was too critical. We couldn't save him. He's dead." D was stunned. The grief on his face was overwhelming. Just then, Jin stood back up. The referee halted the count, and Jin lunged at D, landing blow after blow. D didn't retaliate. He seemed completely defeated. Then, Mira cried out at the top of her lungs, "You were 200 times stronger when you fought me," and handed D a letter written by his late friend. D read it while the referee shouted at Jin to resume fighting, but D was paralyzed by shock, deaf to everything around him. In the letter, his friend had written, I know you entered the Crusher tournament for my sake, but it seems it's too late. I'm dying. My friend, I have no regrets, and I don't want you to have any either. Fight for yourself with all your strength. Don't lose. And most importantly, hold on to your friends and never let them down. Farewell, my friend. At that moment, the arena erupted. It became one of the greatest battles ever witnessed. D landed his ultimate strike on Jin, convinced the victory was his. But suddenly, the tiger appeared. Jin smiled, then launched a legendary counterattack against D, a strike so powerful it shattered the arena itself. The referee declared Jin the winner, and he was overwhelmed with joy. Jin went to Day to help him prepare for his departure, and Mariah followed, carrying a few items with her. Just like that, the trio was reunited once again. But suddenly, a group of fierce-looking individuals appeared. Who were they, and what was about to happen? We shift now to a dark forest, where Taigen, Jin's grandfather, sat surrounded by members of the Nox gang. The gang leader stepped forward and offered Taigen a place among their ranks, but Taigen replied coldly, "Me joining you? That only happens in your dreams." The leader grew enraged, and a violent battle erupted between them. Meanwhile, the high school championship had just concluded its preliminary rounds. Now, the real stages were about to begin. Everything that came before was only training. At this point, 3 contestants would be chosen from each region. From this particular region, Jin and Day were selected for placing first and second respectively. The third spot, however, would be decided in a match between Mira and the opponent who had previously defeated Jin. Her opponent fought ruthlessly, trying every possible way to overpower her, but Mira shattered his bones and defeated him, securing her spot in the final selection. And so, the trio officially advanced to the final rounds. Elsewhere, Park and the commissioners were observing the tournament victors. 2 students caught Park's eye, and he was pleased by their presence. He then spoke of something called the key. He said this key must appear during the final exams, and that it's likely the Nox gang will intervene and disrupt everything. He added firmly, "I must summon the 6 now. You may not yet understand what the key or the 6 means, but in time, it will all become clear." At that same time, Jin, Mira, and D were heading home when they passed by an old man whose eyes fixated on Jin. The old man walked past him and vanished. There was clearly something unusual about him. This man soon appeared before Park Meijin, revealing that he was one of the 6 Park had mentioned. He told Park, "I saw Jin coming here. I heard he ate the cursed fruit and wasn't harmed. I want to take him as my student." Park agreed and filled him in on the latest news. The Nox gang had launched an assault on Taigen, Jin's grandfather. As it turned out, Taigen had obliterated most of the gang members using only one leg. His power seemed unbelievable. But then, the gang leader launched a massive aerial attack, leveling the area and assaulting Taigen with brutal force. Did Taigen survive? Back to Mira, who was out walking and ran into the tournament referee. They sat down together, and he congratulated her on passing the preliminaries. At first, she didn't recognize him, but eventually admitted that she felt deeply inferior compared to Jin and D. She no longer knew how to keep up with them. The referee reassured her, saying, "You'll still grow during the upcoming rounds, and if you master the Moonblade style, no one will be able to defeat you." Mira was touched by his words. The referee then left with his family, but noticed something strange about the man distributing toys to the children. Feeling uneasy, he handed his son to his wife and asked her to leave. He then returned to confront the man, saying, "Don't try to fool me. You're with the Nox gang, aren't you?" The man laughed, replying, "Exactly." Then he tore off his clothes, preparing for battle. It seems the next fight is not in our favor. At that moment, D had gone to see Park to ask about something. There was a strange power used by some contestants during the tournament. "What was it?" he asked. Park answered, "Sharing." Sharing? I don't get it," D said. Park explained, "This power doesn't appear to just anyone. The chance of it manifesting is less than 1%, but those who awaken it can summon beasts from another world and gain immense power. By the way, most of your opponents in the upcoming finals will be sharing users." What a disaster. Elsewhere, Jin was trying to train his body for the tournament, but in truth, he was just messing around. He saw a balloon stuck in a tree and tried to get it for a child. The branch he stood on snapped, but he spun mid-air and landed safely, though his heel got injured. Suddenly, the old man appeared and placed something on Jin's foot. Jin was shocked. His injury was healed. Clearly, this old man had come to train him. In another location, 2 contestants stood facing each other. There was clear hostility between them, old rivals. One was kind and polite, named Albo. The other, well, the scene didn't look promising, my friend. His name was Tak. At last, everyone began preparing for the upcoming battles, and even the 6 started moving, anticipating a possible attack from the gang, or worse. Days passed, and the time finally came for the grand tournament. But something was wrong. The previous referee was gone. He had been replaced because he was killed by one of the Nox gang. the one known as the Imitator. That man then made his way to Commissioner Kyo and stabbed him in the stomach. What a brutal beginning. The first match was announced. Jin's team was facing a powerful opponent. Teams began stepping into the arena. Jin was full of excitement. Mira told him, "Be careful. They might use the same power we saw before." Jin replied, "Don't worry, I've got a new power too," referring to the techniques he had learned from the old man. Jin entered the arena, as did his opponent. Jin then started pressing various pressure points on his own body. His opponent smirked and said, "With that, my energy will peak within the next hour." Passed down to Jin. The opponent began to feel anxious, but Jin didn't move. He calmly said, "Sir, it seems I pressed the wrong pressure points and now I can't move. Would you mind not hitting me?" The opponent didn't hesitate. He lunged forward and struck Jin on the head, nearly breaking it. The old man watching the match fumed in anger and shouted, "You embarrassed us, my boy. May God bless you with a brain, Jin." And thus, the first match ended with Team Geno's defeat. One more loss and they'd be eliminated from the tournament. Then D stepped into the ring. Standing before him was a monstrous opponent. No one could believe this guy was still a high schooler. The fight began, and from the very start, D dominated. He mercilessly shattered the opponent's bones. Everyone thought the match was over, but one girl from the team spoke up. He would never give up. Then she began telling his story. This guy used to fail all his exams. Every year, he'd repeat the grade and fail again. He had no idea what to do with his life. I once saw him and thought, I'll never be like him. He's the perfect image of failure. But those who mock others always end up tasting what they mocked. One day, I was in the finals of a fencing tournament. My opponent threw me to the ground and defeated me. It was my second loss in a row, and I was furious. I threw my sword away in anger. That's when he came to me. He repaired my sword and said, "Do you know what matters most to a fighter?" I asked, "What is it?" He said, "Fighting spirit. Don't let frustration make you destroy your sword. Use it to train harder. Don't give up so easily." His words touched me. I picked up the sword again. The next day, I saw him studying alone. I offered to help him, and since then, we became the greatest pair of failures. My friend. Back to the match, the young man was gathering his strength. He used his special technique and was thrown into the wall of the arena, breaking it down. The opponent screamed, "I won't lose," but D shouted back, "Neither will I." They clashed with full force, but D was on another level and won the match. Tell me, my friend, were you seriously rooting for the other guy? Focus. After D's victory, Jin and Mira were overjoyed. At the same time, the man who had attacked the commissioner was celebrating. "I've killed Kyo, one of the strongest commissioners. The gang will have to promote me." But Kyo suddenly regained consciousness. He leapt up and launched a flaming punch, severing the man's arm in an instant. He said coldly, "You've been yapping for too long. You're giving me a headache." The man screamed, "How are you still alive? I tore your stomach open." Kyo pounced and began to mercilessly beat him until the man lost his other arm too. The attacker tried to use his special technique, but Kyo wouldn't let him. He gathered his power and was ready to end him for good. Just then, 2 other gang members arrived and saved him. 3 against 1? That's not bravery, by the way. Meanwhile, Mira entered the ring to face her opponent. The match began, and Mira was landing strikes from all directions. Her opponent was overwhelmed and on the verge of defeat. But then she heard the voice of the failure bomb cheering her on. She gathered herself and activated her special move against Mira. Mira tried to dodge but couldn't. She then remembered the referee's teachings. He had shown her a few sword techniques. She focused her strength, began to evade with precision, and suddenly she landed a powerful kick that knocked the girl down, securing victory. Someone in the audience said, "2 straight losses for those 2. Another added, "I'm not criticizing, I'm just bullying." At that moment, Kyo was under fierce attack from the 2 gang members. He was being hit from all sides, and it seemed the fight was turning against him. One of them attacked from behind and almost killed him, until another commissioner intervened just in time. Now it was 2 against 2, and the battle truly ignited. The 2 women clashed, and Kyo seized the moment to defeat the second man. One of the gang's girls used her special move on the commissioner, but suddenly, a dragon was unleashed and devoured her. The commissioner smirked and said, "Eat well, my dragon. I don't want you to suffer." The gang girl went into a rage and charged at the commissioner with everything she had, but the commissioner dodged gracefully and delivered a devastating blow that knocked her down. As for Kyo, he grabbed the second man and ripped his wings apart. He was ready to finish him off, but the enemy scooped up the girl and escaped. The third gang member smiled and laughed, then blew up the entire floor. Clearly this gang is up to no good, my friend. Back to the school tournament. Match 2 had begun. That shady guy who I never liked stepped into the ring with his opponent. He stood proudly and declared, "I won't lose to you, Taki. I'll make my grandfather proud." But Taki didn't wait. He activated his technique and destroyed him completely. The crowd was horrified. The servant girl couldn't bear the sight and leapt at Taki to stop him. He struck her down and began stomping on her head in front of everyone. Mira shouted at Jin, "I won't let you interfere this time." But Jin replied, "Just watch the ring." Suddenly, Deep appeared and kicked Taki away from the girl. The referee stepped in and stopped the fight. The defeated boy, furious, tried to attack Taki again to kill him. But did you really think Taki would be hurt? Not a chance. He charged and punched the boy so hard in the stomach that his ferocious fish unleashed hell on him, breaking every bone in his body. This guy is dangerous, my friend. The injured boy was rushed to the emergency room. His grandfather approached Park and asked, "Why did you disqualify Taki from the tournament?" Park replied, "Because he might be the key." The grandfather nodded. Understood. Oh, and by the way, Taki is also one of the 6. Due to D's interference in the match, he would now be suspended and miss the next game. That meant the victory would go to the opponent. One more loss, and they'd be eliminated. Mira screamed at him in anger and frustration. At the same time, the third match of the qualifiers began. Team Albo was facing off against another team. They had already lost their first match. One more loss and they'd be out. Before the second match began, Albo approached the girl on his team and handed her a plan to follow. She executed it perfectly, overwhelming her opponent with ease. Seems like Albo isn't as simple as he looks. That brain of his is working just fine. He then enters the arena. This is the match that will determine their fate. Either they move forward, or this marks their end. The boy standing across from Ilbo appeared arrogant, brimming with overconfidence, and said, "Ready for me or not?" Immediately, he activated his tribe technique and everyone could sense his power. Yet, the person standing before him remained completely unfazed. Ilbo replied, "You do seem strong." And then, the two launched into combat. Ilbo was in control at first, grabbing the boy and completely throwing him off balance. The boy grew furious, unable to do anything. He tried to strike, but Ilbo blocked his attacks effortlessly. The boy then activated his synergy technique, but Ilbo used his phasing skills to easily dodge the strike, then delivered a powerful kick that finished him off completely. At that moment, Jin noticed something odd. The jacket Ilbo wore bore the same tiger symbol that appeared on his grandfather's clothing. Jin's team finished watching the match and left the arena. On their way out, Mira tried to speak with Jin, but he seemed upset. "I'll leave you now," he said, then walked away. Park had summoned Jin the day before, and told him they had found a large amount of blood at the scene where his grandfather fought the Nox gang. It seemed his grandfather had either been captured or taken. Jin drifted deep into thought, until suddenly, Ilbo entered the room, greeted him and said, "I'm actually a fan of yours." Then, without warning, he grabbed Jin's hand and began fighting. Jin responded, "What's wrong with you? Calm down, man." Ilbo quickly apologized. "Sorry, I got a little excited." Ilbo then asked about the tiger symbol on Jin's jacket and where he got it from. Jin replied that it belonged to his grandfather. Ilbo nodded and said, "Out of respect for him, I wear this." Nothing more. "By the way, how is he doing now?" Jin didn't respond. His silence and expression said everything. Then Ilbo asked, "Why do you respect him so much?" And so, he began telling his story. "When I was little, my father died. I wasn't even 4 years old. My mother took me to an isolated training ground and left me there. I didn't know anyone, couldn't fit in with anyone. The training was brutal. I was always sad, until one day your grandfather showed up. He handed me a taekwondo manual, something my own grandfather had asked him to give me. When I asked him about my grandfather, he told me he died in the war, fighting alongside him. He said he was incredibly brave and strong. That's one of the most precious memories I carry." Jin was moved by the story, a faint smile appearing on his face. But suddenly, someone attacked them from behind. Ilbo blocked the strike and said sternly, "If you try that again, I won't forgive you." It was clear that man didn't come with good intentions. After that, Ilbo said his farewells and left. The next day, Commissioner Kyo stormed into Park's office, furious. He started smashing everything inside and shouted, "Why did you let the referee's wife and son die? Do you even have a heart?" Park activated his power and pinned Kyo to the wall. "Did you forget who you're talking to? By the way, the damage you caused, that's 9 months' salary gone from your pay." Kyo went up to the rooftop and learned the truth. A young girl explained that the wife and child weren't dead. They were mere statues, which she had crafted to hide them. So Park had in fact done his duty, and more, while Kyo had overreacted and imagined things on his own. Later, Kyo began searching for the fairy, quite literally. He found a rusty metal piece, and when Daib saw him, he felt pity and brought him food. Daib said, "Listen, I want you to teach me the synergy technique. In return, I'll feed you every day and take care of you." Kyo agreed and asked, "Why do you want to learn it?" Daib replied, "Because my friend is in trouble, and I want to stand by his side and help him." He was referring to Jin. Kyo simply nodded and said, "All right," and the training began. Meanwhile, the Nox gang was holding a meeting in preparation to invade the tournament and claim the key. Things were about to ignite, my friend. As for Jin, he sat at home, utterly heartbroken over his grandfather, unsure what to do. He remembered the last day they spent together, his 6th birthday, when they took a picture together. His grandfather had told him, "One day, you'll celebrate your birthday with your friends," and then left. That day, Jin had just turned 17. He was deeply saddened, until Mira and Dee appeared, surprising him with a birthday celebration. "How did you know it was today?" he asked. They answered, "Your watch sent us a birthday reminder. So Dee, Gina, and I plan to celebrate with you." They had brought food and many gifts, and slowly, Jin began to cheer up. But the next day, just before the tournament, someone knocked on Jin's door and left an envelope. He opened it and found a picture of his grandfather, chained up with a missing arm. On it was written the address of his location. Things were about to explode. Jin grabbed the address, got on his bike, and rushed off, anxious and afraid for his grandfather. At the same time, the match was about to begin. Mira and Dee couldn't find Jin anywhere. A girl entered and said, "Your match has started. If you don't go up to the arena now, you'll be disqualified." Panic set in. Dee said to Mira, "I'll go find Jin and bring him back. You must win the first match, and take your time." Mira nodded and stepped into the arena. Their opponent looked no easy challenge. Mistakes weren't an option. At that very moment, Jin reached the location from the letter. He entered, opened a door, and was horrified by what he saw. His grandfather, unconscious, arm severed, chained up. Jin was frozen with shock. He ran to him, trying desperately to wake him. Then he heard it, a strange, chilling laugh. His grandfather's neck turned 180 degrees. Suddenly, an explosion rocked the entire place, blasting Jin back and destroying everything. At the same time, Mira's battle had just begun. Her opponent? A man named Marin. The referee announced the start, and Mira attacked instantly, not holding back. But Marin had coated his body in oil, making it impossible for her blade to cut him. He slipped and dodged with ease. Then he called for his partner, who threw him a sword. And the shock. It was Mira's own blade, the one that had been taken from her before. Mira said to him, "Return the sword now." But he replied, "No," and then charged at her again with ferocity. Mira tried to block him with her sword, but it shattered with the very first strike. At that moment, Marin revealed to her the true form of his sword and said, "This is a national treasure. What a shame it was in your possession." Then he struck her, landing a blow to her abdomen. He lifted her up again with one hand and slapped her several times, then delivered a flurry of punches until she collapsed to the ground. She struggled to stand, but he showed no mercy. Mockingly, he said, "All this effort is pointless. By the way, your companion will never make it here." At that, Mira grew furious. She realized they had done something to Jin. She lunged at him, shouting, "There's no way you can defeat him. Jin will never lose to the likes of you." But Marin struck her again, and she fell to the ground, completely spent. At the same moment, a member of the Nox gang was celebrating his victory over Jin, boasting triumphantly. But Jin suddenly rose to his feet and asked him, "Who are you?" The man responded by creating countless clones of himself and said, "There's no room in this tournament for weaklings like you." He commanded the clones to attack, and Jin began receiving blows from every direction. Yet he held his ground, dodged most of the strikes, and took out several of them. But the clones were endless, my friend. They regrouped and dragged him to an underground chamber, where he found himself surrounded by people he was meant to face. He then realized that everything that had happened was part of the gang's grand scheme. He asked one of them, "Did you do this to them?" The man replied, "Yes, and soon you'll join them." Jin's rage ignited, and he destroyed all the clones. Then he stood up, pressed 3 pressure points on his body, and declared, "Get ready, you will die now." Meanwhile, Mira was drifting through the sky, looking as if she had given up. Then she entered a strange space and heard a voice say to her, "You are weak." She answered, "Yes, I am weak, but I will never give up." The voice extended a hand toward her, took her form and said, "Very well, I shall grant you strength." Her energy blazed, and the arena lit up with brilliance. Marin's sword vanished from his hand and flew toward her. And finally, her shared technique skill was fully activated. Her form as a hero emerged. Marin panicked and activated his own skill, but it was already over. Mira dodged all his attacks and delivered a decisive blow that ended him once and for all. What an incredible strike. But her body failed her afterward, and she said, "I've reached my limit." In that final moment, Jin stepped in, praised her bravery, and then left to prepare for his next opponent. His opponent asked, "Who was that with you?" But Jin didn't answer. Infuriated, the opponent charged with all his might. Jin dodged the attacks and said, "I'll show you what happened to him." He launched a series of strikes and kicks that left his foe paralyzed. Jin's movements were masterful, so much so that his opponent could no longer breathe. But Jin didn't stop there. He activated his original skill and sliced his opponent in two. The foe tried to rise again, but Jin's second original skill finished him off completely. Everyone watched Jin in awe of his power. The tiger has raised a tiger. After the battle, we transition to a flashback from Kabo's past. He was training at a certain center when a fellow student named Soon approached him and asked, "Why do you train more than everyone else?" He answered, because of a promise I made to someone long ago. She understood what he meant, smiled at him, and walked away. Soon was one of the first people to ever bring ease to his heart. But when he faced her in a match, he showed no mercy. She fell to the ground and raised her hand in surrender. But Tiki ran to her and broke her leg. Kabo witnessed it, but he couldn't move. The doctor examined Soon's leg and told her, with time, the bone will heal and you'll walk again, but you will never return to martial arts. The shock devastated her. When Kabo heard the news, he went to Tiki and beat him mercilessly, shattering his face in front of everyone. He was overwhelmed with sorrow. That night, a commissioner came to him and handed him an invitation to the tournament, promising, if you win, you may have any wish granted, even restoring Soon's leg. Kabo entered the tournament for that reason alone, but after meeting Jin, he remembered the promise he had made to his grandfather. And now, my friend, it seems he stands at a crossroads. Later, the girl used her power on the three others and began interrogating them. Jin recounted everything that had happened. They were in disbelief until Park spoke and said, Nox is the gang that kidnapped T-Jin, and they're a threat to all shared skill users. How thrilling. It seems the tournament holds even greater dangers ahead. Jin asked Park, how can I defeat Nox and rescue my grandfather? Park answered, you three are weak and can do nothing now. But if you win the tournament, then perhaps I'll give you the information you seek. They replied, very well, we will. The time came for the next showdown. Jin's team versus Bo's team. It seems things are about to ignite. The first battle would be between Day and Sangha. The two stepped into the ring and prepared to fight. The clash was swift, blows exchanged without pause. Sangha landed a hit on Day's ear, which shook him. He gathered his strength and struck her back, but she dodged just in time. He lunged again, but her last hit had thrown off his balance. He missed and stumbled. At that moment, Sangha focused her energy into her legs and activated her shared skill, delivering a powerful blow that tore through the ring. Everyone thought Day was defeated. But can you imagine Day, after seeing his friend in a similar situation, accepting defeat? He activated his special ability, grabbed her legs and slammed her, sending her flying to the edge of the arena, nearly losing. Kabo called out, enough! Surrender! He feared she would end up like Soon, but she stood again and told him, surrender or keep fighting. That choice is mine alone. She launched herself at him with all she had, but in the end, Day emerged victorious, and Sangha lost the match. They carried her away for treatment. She is being treated. Sun arrives at the scene and says, Elbow, I heard you join this tournament for my sake. First, thank you for your concern, but I want you to fight for yourself. Your battle with Jin has been your dream for a long time, so don't let me be an obstacle. Do what you think is right. Her words deeply move Elbow, and it seems, this battle may never come again, my friend. At the same time, the leader of the Nux gang arrives and begins killing the team members one by one. Park senses his presence and rushes to stop him. A fierce battle is clearly about to begin. Meanwhile, Jin and Elbow appear in the arena, ready to fight. Jin says to Elbow, from the look on your face, this is going to be a great battle. And indeed, a ferocious fight begins in every sense of the word. Jin and Elbow exchange strikes using their full combat prowess. Yet Elbow's superiority is clear, and Jin's performance appears weak in comparison. As they fight, Elbow says, you're weak in close combat, so you'll be hit easily. Jin backs away, replying, fine then, try this. But Elbow effortlessly counters and kicks him in the head. Elbow adds, your second weakness is that your attack intent is far too obvious. Anyone could read it. Jin retorts, alright, let's see how you handle this. He unleashes his original technique, but Elbow counters with his own ability and blocks it with ease, causing Jin to fall to the ground in pain. Elbow continues, your third weakness. Your ability negatively affects your body, making you weaker. Elbow keeps insulting Jin mid-battle, while Jin tries to retaliate in vain, until he starts thinking seriously about a strategy to fight back. And finally, he finds an idea. He strikes Elbow using Mira's technique, Moonblade, then follows up with another attack using the first technique, forcing some distance between them. Jin says, the second weakness has been neutralized. Their fight reignites with renewed intensity, transforming the match into a breathtaking spectacle. At the same time, the battle between Park and the Nux leader begins. The leader uses his synergy power and opens the sky, summoning a colossal sword from above to crush them. Park counters with his own synergy ability, but the leader doesn't relent and calls in his subordinates. A strange gate opens in the sky, from which a massive black figure emerges, pressing down on the sword. Park is on the verge of collapse. Just then, Seo, one of the six greats, intervenes and unleashes his power. He attacks the sword with multiple weapons, gradually breaking it apart, while the commissioners begin to strike the gang. Seo summons a creature that bites into the sword and shatters it. The leader is stunned, and Park collapses. At that very moment, the battle between Jin and Elbow continues at its fiercest. Elbow keeps exposing Jin's weaknesses, while Jin evolves at an astonishing pace. The truth is, Taejin Jin knew he would leave one day. So before his departure, he asked Elbow to teach Jin how to fight when the time came. And today, Elbow fulfills that promise. The two prepare for their final strikes, but Jin surpasses expectations. Using the dragon technique, Elbow crashes to the ground. The referee starts counting, and everyone believes Jin has lost. But suddenly, his energy drops to -1. The key has appeared. Park senses it as well, and Elbow now faces the nine-tailed fox, who activates his synergy power, setting the arena ablaze. Everyone is stunned by Elbow's new power as he appears in a blazing new form. He advances like a lion, and everyone feels his newfound might. Even Park's energy trembles. He realizes, this is the key they've been searching for. Park is overwhelmed with euphoria, while the Nux leader decides to retreat swiftly to eliminate the key, but Park won't allow that. The battle between Jin and Elbow continues. Jin tries to read Elbow's movements, but Elbow is now far stronger and delivers merciless blows. Jin is powerless, but he refuses to give up. He rises once more to attack, and just before taking another hit, he suddenly vanishes. Yes, he used one of Elbow's new techniques. He strikes from a distance, but Elbow counters with a punch that sends him crashing to the ground. Jin says, "Will I really be unable to face him?" But he notices Elbow falter for a moment. He seizes the opportunity and launches a desperate assault, searching for an opening. They trade blows and Jin begins to understand. You haven't become someone else. Only your power has increased. And in that case, I know what to do. Mira and Dai are shaken by his perseverance and refusal to give in. The two recall their memories and unleash their full strength. The battle becomes legendary. Elbow gathers all his energy and shouts, "Let's end this!" He charges at Jin to finish it, but suddenly, strange, mysterious memories return to Jin. The attacks, the crowd, they all vanish. A pure white light envelops everything. No one understands what's happening, not even Elbow. Jin's mythical energy manifests, and everyone watches in silence. Elbow screams and channels his energy for one final attack, but Jin presses the air with his hand, sending Elbow flying upward. The tornado Jin creates tears through the clouds, and as Elbow is suspended in the sky, a giant hand crashes down upon him, shattering his bones. A magnificent end to a magnificent battle. Jin stuns everyone. His energy is no joke. The referee announces Jin as the victor. The crowd is speechless. Dai and Mira rush to him and celebrate. They say, "So this is your synergy power? Man, you blew us away. Why did you even worry us?" At the same time, Ilbo and his team had just begun to recover from the battle. As Ilbo regained consciousness, he asked them, "Did I lose?" They nodded, and though he had lost, he accepted the defeat with a calm spirit, even showing a faint smile. It didn't matter now. Both fighters were quickly taken for medical treatment. The news reached Park, who could hardly believe what he was hearing. The Fox? Defeated? Who was this powerful boy he faced? His opponent had been the leader of the Nox gang, and even he couldn't believe what had just happened. He grabbed the girl who had accompanied him and hurled her toward Park, taking advantage of the confusion to flee. The real events were only just beginning. Meanwhile, celebrations erupted across the arena in honor of the great victory. Excitement soared, and Ilbo lay receiving treatment, surrounded by friends who teased and joked with him non-stop. Shortly after, Jin approached, handing him a cold drink and checking on his condition. It was clear that a bond had formed between them. Winning or losing no longer seemed to matter much. Ilbo's friends went out to buy a few supplies, leaving Jin alone with him. It was then that Jin began to speak of his grandfather and the tragedy that had befallen him at the hands of the Nox gang. He explained that he had to win, no matter the cost, to rescue his grandfather from their clutches. Ilbo listened carefully, then said with resolve, "And who else could save him but you?" The night passed peacefully, until something strange began to happen. The sharing bond within the boy started to behave abnormally, clouding his mind. He left his room in an unstable state. His maid noticed and followed him anxiously. On his way, he encountered Tech and suddenly launched a violent attack. Tech tried to dodge his strikes, but the boy's energy was overwhelming, and Tech couldn't hold it back. The maid arrived at the battlefield just in time to distract the boy. Tech took the chance and struck with full force, tearing through both of their bodies. The maid was gravely injured during the fight. Her stomach ripped open. Seeing her like that, the boy lost all control. His bond consumed her completely, amplifying his energy several times over. The fight between him and Tech continued until their injuries took them to the infirmary, where both finally lost consciousness. Ilbo was shocked and declared a state of emergency. Some tried to restrain the creature, but it absorbed them into its bond. Ilbo fought with all his strength, holding on for a while. But it was no use. Tech kept battling, slashing the monster with his fangs again and again. Suddenly, the boy regained awareness. He pulled the maid out of his mouth, fully healed, then grew in size, larger and larger, until he began releasing strange creatures from his body, capturing everyone around him, including Ilbo's friends. Terrified for them, Ilbo didn't know what to do. The maid awoke and rushed to June, assuring him that she was all right. But just then, Tech appeared behind him whispering goodbye, before tearing off half of his upper body and teleporting his friends to safety. Yet the damage was done. One of his friends had lost an arm. Ilbo couldn't bear it. He lost control and transformed into the fox, lunging at Tech with blinding rage, shattering the glass around them. It was as if he couldn't see anything else. At that moment, the leader of the Nox gang stepped into the street and unleashed his power. Strange creatures began falling from the sky. Chaos engulfed everything. Even Park Mujin couldn't tolerate the situation anymore and announced the termination of the high school champion tournament, preparing for what looked like the beginning of the end. Jin and Mira Odi watched the scene from afar, unable to understand what was happening. At that moment, the gang leader opened a massive gate in the sky, from which a colossal black beast emerged, changing form rapidly. It was like a scene from a nightmare. The maid wept bitterly over the boy's death. Meanwhile, the grandfather had been watching everything. Realizing what had happened, he vowed revenge on Tech and the Nox gang. The old man, by the way, was an incredibly powerful fighter. As for Tech, he began recalling his past, how his mother abandoned him and gave him to a wealthy man who believed only in power. That man raised him in hatred, teaching him that victory was everything. Tech grew stronger, acquired powers from the Nox gang, then killed the man and took his fortune, declaring, "I will never lose again." He remembered his past with Ilbo and how they had once attacked him. Enraged, Ilbo released terrifying creatures from his body, unleashing a true massacre. The monsters attacked mercilessly. He struck them with relentless power. Haunted by images of his injured friends and the dreams that Tech had shattered, he tore them down one by one with overwhelming force. Jin, Mira, and Dai finally reached the battlefield and saw Ilbo mercilessly beating Tech, following him in every direction, punching without restraint. Tech remembered the words of the old man. "You must not fail. You must always win." His rage intensified and he activated his bond, merging with it to create a monster that devoured Ilbo and absorbed his energy, separating the ki from his body. Everyone was stunned. Park sensed the enormous power from the ki and couldn't believe what had happened. Tekwa tried to take the ki and absorb its power, but Bomb surprised him with one of the six, launching a creature that knocked the ki away. More monsters appeared. The old man fought them off to help retrieve the ki, but Bomb, the Nox leader, soared into the sky with it. In the end, the ki landed in Jin's hands. He smashed the monster's head and claimed it, but the creature sprouted a second head, growing even more powerful. Park Mujin reached his energy limit. They were all about to fall. At that same moment, the head of the FBI was watching everything unfold. Realizing the scale of the threat posed by the Nox gang, he decided to obliterate the entire city to end it once and for all. The girl learned of this and rushed to inform Park. When Jin found out, he made a choice. He would protect the children. He created a special barrier and placed them all inside, shielding them from the impending destruction. Indeed, they were transported to a strange place that no one could recognize. Dai and Mira were there with the rest. And meanwhile, Ilbo began losing consciousness from sheer exhaustion. After that, Dee and Mira activated their shared technique to heal those who were with them. At the same moment, Jin had arrived at Elbo's location and found him bleeding from every part of his body. Jin immediately began applying pressure to specific points to stop the bleeding. Elbo finally regained consciousness and handed Jin a key, saying, "I don't know what this key is nor what it means, but it was inside you." Elbo responded, "Yes. I don't know why it was inside me either, but I feel an immense energy in it. Take it with you and protect it from Teak Jin." Jin replied, "All right." At that very moment, Teak had reached Dee and Mira's location and asked them about the key. No one knew where it was, and they were puzzled by his sudden shift in behavior. They attempted to flee, but Teak lost his mind and shouted, "I'll kill you all!" He then summoned strange creatures and began attacking them savagely. Dee and Mira activated their shared technique again and began fighting back, but his power was overwhelming. It became clear they wouldn't be able to keep up with him. Meanwhile, Jin had bid farewell to Elbo and started searching for Dee and Mira until he found them, but they had been severely exhausted from battling Teak and couldn't move. Teak noticed the key with Jin and said, "Give it to me." At that moment, Dee was lying on the ground, speaking with difficulty. "Get out of here quickly. This man has lost his mind." Jin remained silent for a moment, clearly fatigued. He asked, "Why did you do that to them?" Teak replied carelessly, "I'll do the same to you if you don't hand over the key now." Jin became furious and responded, "Fine." Outside, the world had plunged into complete chaos with battles erupting everywhere. Park had reached his limits, unable to defend anymore. The leader of the Nox gang was about to finish him off. Suddenly, two people intervened. One of them rushed toward Park to help him block the attack, but they were on the brink of collapse. At that moment, the Nox leader was at the height of his exhilaration, awaiting the final collapse. But, can you imagine what happened next? Suddenly, a green light illuminated the entire city, and everyone within it, citizens and fighters alike, was instantly transported to the mountain. Everyone, except the Nox leader, who remained standing in shock. He looked behind him to find Jason appearing, using his power to disintegrate incoming missiles into ash. Then, Jisan launched toward the giant Nox creature to destroy it in the sky. The leader screamed in terror, "Stop!" But Jisan didn't stop. He unleashed a massive meteor toward the creature, annihilating it completely. The leader trembled in fear, begging him to stop, but Jisan declared, "I'll avenge my grandson, and I'm taking you to hell with me." He then shattered the barrier surrounding the creature, and a devastating explosion swept through the area, obliterating everything within it. Everyone saw that explosion, and no one could believe what had just happened. At that exact moment, Teak viciously attacked Jin, sending them both crashing down into the city once again. They looked around in disbelief and saw Jisan sitting on the ground, his energy completely drained, while the Nox gang leader had also reached the end of his endurance. Jin approached, but Teak grabbed him and said, "Enough, this ends here. Give me the key." He took the key from Jin, and his body began to transform suddenly. A terrifying, strange energy erupted from him. He looked down on them with contempt and said, "You will all die." Outside, Park and his comrades were assessing the situation, saying, "Jisan is finished, the Nox leader is finished, only the kids remain. What will happen now?" At that moment, Dee and Mira sensed Teak's monstrous energy and decided to flee immediately. But Teak caught Mira and crushed her bones. Dee tried to save her, but he was struck down. Teak was unstoppable, attacking everyone mercilessly. No one could stand in his way. As for Jin, he began gathering his energy. But before he could act, Teak grabbed him and said, "Your effort is useless. Anyone who stands against me will die. This is your end." But upon hearing that, Jin was consumed by rage. He remembered his friend's suffering, an elbow, and his emotions ignited. He began channeling his energy with tremendous force. He broke free and pressed the power points in his body and said, "I'll show you your true place." Then, he launched a furious assault. His power surged dramatically, and he rained blow after blow on Teak, giving him no chance to breathe. Dee and Mira, inspired, joined him in the fight. The three of them attacked Teak from every direction. But do you think they could keep up with Teak in his new form? Never. Teak surrounded them and unleashed his strange creatures. They attacked Jin and forced him away from Mira. Mira rushed toward him, trying to help. Suddenly, Teak appeared above them and said, "Goodbye." He then unleashed a massive red beam to destroy them. They thought it was the end. But Dee intervened at the last moment and took the hit in their place. He looked at his friend with pride and said, "Run." At that moment, Jin was stunned by his friend's sacrifice. Dee's technique had reached its limit. Jin remembered his past, when he was the Monkey King, once surrounded by monsters on all sides, and everyone had abandoned the fight. But he had risen and crushed them one by one. The call of his weapon brought him back to life. He merged with his technique, and a mighty force surged from him. No one could believe it had come from his body. Jin stepped forward to his weapon and grasped it with ease. Teak sensed Jin's power and said, "Show me what you've got." And the two of them launched into a brutal battle, so intense the earth could no longer withstand it. Teak was no pushover. He kept striking Jin and summoning his creatures, but Jin didn't falter. He crushed them one after another. Then he leapt toward Teak again, attacking with fierce determination, as everyone watched in awe, unable to believe what their eyes were witnessing. At that moment, Teak had taken full control of Jin, dragging him forcefully across the ground. As Jin endured the blows, a fire of rage ignited within him. He screamed in his face, "Didn't I tell you I'd teach you a lesson?" Just then, Bomi summoned his weapon. It shot forward at incredible speed, stretching through the air. Teak had no choice but to be hurled away by its sheer force. Jin, too, dashed toward his weapon, shouting, "Get ready, you!" He gathered all his strength, then suddenly launched a fierce punch that sent Teak flying, roaring as he struck. "This one's for Dee, my friend. The next for Mira. The third for Ilbo and my comrades. The fourth for you, my friend. And the fifth?" Another devastating blow landed as he yelled, "That's enough, my dear friend. Is it too much for you or what?" At that point, Teak lost control, collapsing to the ground, defeated. Memories of what Ilbo had done to him in the past resurfaced, how Ilbo had struck him down, and his emotions exploded. He wanted to end this once and for all with his full power. But Jin rose again, summoning his lightning, and charged at Teak with everything he had, delivering a final crushing blow. And so, Teak was finished. Jin had shattered his bones and stunned everyone with his might. They rushed to him to celebrate, but he had spent so much energy that he could no longer stand, falling into their arms. Suddenly, Teak transformed into a massive beast and tried to capture Jin, attempting to drain his energy. Mira and Dee intervened to save him, fleeing from the monstrous form. Jin tried to fight back, but his strength had left him, and he was about to fall until Ilbo appeared, saying calmly, "There's no shame in leaning on your friends a little." Mira and Dee joined them. Ilbo launched an attack on Teak, and together, they activated the shared power. They struck Teak with the key, but the battle wasn't easy. Teak resisted fiercely. At that moment, Ilbo shouted, "This one's for you!" And with a powerful kick, he sent Teak flying, opening the way for Jin to activate his ultimate technique. With a mighty cry, Jin declared, "Path of Peace." Thus, Jin and his companions triumphed over Teak, crushing his pride. The sun rose again and joy filled everyone's hearts. Even Ha had exhausted all his energy, and the shared power had run its course. Ilbo went to help, but Tech rejected his hand, saying, "Farewell." The key returned to Ilbo, and everything was restored. Meanwhile, a girl was walking through one of the caves beneath the city. She pressed a card she was carrying and looked ahead to see a massive gate. Its key was that very card. At that same moment, everyone was checking on one another, celebrating the end of the battle. Many had lost limbs. Dreams had been shattered, but there was nothing they could do. Such was their fate. Suddenly, a girl appeared before them, carrying the girl who had been in the cave. She said, "Congratulations." Everyone was stunned and asked, "Congratulations for what?" With a smile, she replied, "I am one of the 6, and the most important person in this tournament. I am the one who will grant your wish." Jin was shocked. He rushed to her, asking about his grandfather, but then remembered, the victory wasn't his alone. He turned to Dee and Mira, seeking their thoughts. They told him, "Wish for whatever you like, man. We just wanted to help." In that moment, Jin wished he could find his grandfather, or at least learn something about him. But could he abandon all these injured people behind, let their dreams crumble just to fulfill his own number? He couldn't accept that, so he wished for the healing of everyone wounded in that battle. The girl then activated her power, releasing a radiant light that restored the missing limbs of all who stood. Even Senga's legs were healed, along with her sisters. No one could believe what had happened. Ilbo was the happiest of all. He embraced Senga tightly. As for Jin, his heart was full of joy seeing his friend safe again. Yet his sorrow for his grandfather remained. He asked the girl once more if she knew anything about him. She answered, "Don't worry, your grandfather is still alive. I can sense his energy, though it's faint." The moment Jin heard that, a smile spread across his face and he collapsed to the ground, completely drained. He later woke up in his apartment, with Mira and Dee celebrating the victory beside him. Everyone was overjoyed, but at the same time, Jin's grandfather was being held captive in an unknown place, tortured by the Nox gang, who were conducting strange experiments on him. And it seems, everything is about to be turned upside down, my friend. And with that, the first season of this anime comes to an end. If you want us to continue with season 2, let us know in the comments, and we'll begin as soon as possible. Don't forget to like and share. We'll see you in the next adventure. Goodbye.